President and Mrs. Kennedy at Love Field 50 years ago, before the country changed in an instant. Most Americans are too young to remember the horror of Dallas, but even so, the questions over what happened that day and what might have been linger for all of us. Ken Burns joins us next, but first, here's ABC's chief national correspondent, Byron Pitts.
He had it all. Good looks, great wealth, immeasurable power. And that gift.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Not just to deliver words we could hear, but a vision we could see.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In a nation long opposed to kings and queens, the Kennedys were American royalty.
There's Mrs. Kennedy, and the crowd yells.
Then came Dallas.
And I can see his suntan all the way from here.
Less than an hour after touching down at Love Field, President John F. Kennedy was dead. Former CBS News correspondent Dan Rather was there.
Everybody knew if there was going to be trouble anywhere, it would be in Dallas.
Why?
Because of the history.
Dallas, 1963. Nowhere in Texas did the jagged edge of segregation cut deeper, anti-Kennedy sentiment spew any stronger. This flyer greeted the president when he arrived.
It's very important to understand that when they say, well, if there's going to be trouble with me in Dallas, nobody I know of was thinking of assassination.
The president and first lady.
Amidst the cheering, a sigh of relief. The president's motorcade approaching the last block.
We were standing out in the street.
Tina Towner was 13, filming this footage steps away from the Texas School Book Depository.
I saw Jackie, pink hat and a pink coat.
2 seconds later, history changed.
I heard 3 gunshots.
Stretched out here was this incredible scene.
The grassy knoll.
People were screaming, some people were crying.
You'll excuse me if I am out of breath. A bulletin, President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas.
Dr. Ronald Jones was having lunch when the Parkland Hospital operator paged him.
She said, Dr. Jones, the president's been shot, and they're bringing him to the emergency room.
What was your reaction in that moment?
A flush still comes over you when you hear that, even today.
The first unconfirmed reports say the president was hit in the head.
His arms had been placed on arm boards.
Any sign of life at all?
There was no sign of life, in my opinion. He had a fixed stare. His eyes were open. I never saw him move. I never saw him breathe.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Within hours, the new president is sworn in. The accused assassin in jail.
I emphatically deny these charges.
While questions linger today about Lee Harvey Oswald's role, one thing is certain. He was the first man ever murdered on live TV. In these gut-wrenching, heartbreaking moments, television news had come of age. The indescribable, the indelible.
This country pulled itself together. On the important things, we stand united. And in the wake of the Kennedy assassination, one of the most impressive things about the American people and about our country was that we pulled together and stood united.
It seems, Dan, it moved you then, it moves you still.
Of course, and I have no apology for that.
We're very focused on the family because that's the only thing that got us through, I think. It certainly got my dad through.
Former Rhode Island Congressman Patrick Kennedy, JFK's nephew, Ted Kennedy's son. 50 years later, he reminds us a nation lost plenty, a family lost more.
My father, frankly, was not just my father. He was the father for my cousin John and Caroline and all my Robert Kennedy cousins, too.
Civil rights activist Marion Wright Edelman says President Kennedy was not the perfect president, but was perfect for his time.
He was a reluctant civil rights warrior.
You say reluctant, but a warrior still, yes?
Well, he grew. Let's just say he grew into it.
Setting the stage for the Civil Rights Bill, the Peace Corps, the space program. John Fitzgerald Kennedy did not live long, but in 46 years, he did much.
He spoke truth.
When one man is enslaved, all are not free.
It was a universal truth that transcended his time.
We cannot be satisfied to rest here. We have made a beginning, but we have only begun.
For this week, Byron Pitts, ABC News, Dallas.
Our thanks to Byron. And now let's welcome award-winning documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. Ken, thanks for being here this morning. What is indelible about JFK's legacy?
It is, like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, these legacies of loss, first of all, this of cut short. But what we remember in a positive way is the hope and the ambition and the sense of possibility, something that in this day of sort of frozen government seems really impossible. And so I think what we take from him is a sense of possibility. The fact that it was cut short actually, strangely, paradoxically, aids that possibility now. We think if only he had lived, all these things would have been happened, but the legacy is unclear in that regard. With regard to civil rights, it took a new dealer like LBJ to push the things through. We're not sure Kennedy would have. With Vietnam, all of his advisors traveled over to LBJ, and we got deeper and deeper involved. When Kennedy's administration started, there were 900 advisors. There were 16,000 when he was killed. He both agonized over it, and we have that record, but he was also standing firm in the face of humiliations with Khrushchev at Vienna, in the face of other things.
This legacy of Kennedy's time will certainly outlive us. Those who weren't.
You know what? It's not Camelot. It's Brigadoon. It's this evanescent moment that comes, and we hope, we see it as a dream. It's fleeting, and it just stays there for a couple of seconds, and we wish we could extend it, and we don't know what the future would have been without him, and we invest that legacy with all of our hopes and all of our wishes. He represents the best in us because it was cut short, and I think that's where the legacy, even with the conspiracy theories that continue to abide, it has to do with our seeing him so high and needing to elevate the person who took him away to that same height. It couldn't have just been one lowly person. It had to be a vast conspiracy, and that's a testament to the great man.
I want to quickly turn to another president and the Gettysburg Address, and a project you're involved in called The Address.
Yeah, I'm making a little film about kids who have learning difficulties, boys in a school in Vermont, a boarding school. It's the place of last resort. They've been bullied and marginalized. Each year they're asked to memorize and then publicly recite the Gettysburg Address. They've been doing it for 35 years at this school. And it's a minefield of terrors and anxieties for these kids, but they do it. And as I was editing, I said, why can't we do it? If they can do it, we can do it. And they're so inspirational. And so I've issued a challenge, and all the presidents, living presidents have read, many people in media and notable Americans have done this. And we're challenging people, and our website, Learn the Address, is filling up with ordinary citizens, so-called ordinary citizens, adding their thing. These are 2 minutes of the greatest speech in American history, in which he's doubling down on the Declaration. He said all men are created equal, Thomas Jefferson. He didn't mean it. Lincoln said, we mean it, and here are our marching orders, and these are still our marching orders.
That is a wonderful project, Ken Burns. Thank you for joining us. And stay with ABC News all week long as we remember the life and legacy of President Kennedy.